Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us. We have with us now the man I introduced as the Galactic One, the one and only Jim Starlin, and help me out with the name. Jamie, am I saying it right? Because I know there's some...
It's fine.
I misspelled it once or twice, and Spencer yelled at me. So.
Talented Jamie Jameson.
Jamie Jameson. Like I said, I misspelled it. I'm really bad at names. So, welcome in, guys. Thank you so much for being here. This is a huge honor for me to get to talk to anybody in this industry, but especially to talk to someone who's really kind of transformed my fandom for years. So,
sorry to have ruined your life like that.
I don't know. I got the greatest job in the world. I get to talk to people like you. So. Pretty great job, I would say. So let's start at the beginning. The question I've been asking everybody is, how did you come to be in comics, and why did you choose comics? We'll start with Jim, and then go to Jamie.
Okay. Basically, I am a kid in Detroit. I just stumbled onto comics. Started off with Mickey Mouse and Uncle Scrooge, and developed as I went along, and around 8 years old, I decided this is what I wanted to do with my life. Wanted to completely waste it on drawing comic books. How about you, Jamie?
I stumbled upon it. I always liked comics. I started working with Scott Hampton and Craig P. Russell and American Gods, just kind of doing layout stuff and doing like the modeling for the characters of Laura Moon and the Zorias, and just started messing around with it and just happened into it and realized I love doing it. So
it's funny, Jamie, when we got your promo shots and stuff together for this thing, I saw your face and I immediately flashed on a piece of art that Glenn Fabry had showed me. That was an American Gods cover he was working on. I'm like, I know that person.
Yep, that's me. Issue number 4 had my face. It was a picture I did that David Mack actually did a beautiful job on. And when I asked him about it and if he still had it, he was like, it sold within seconds. So I was like, shouldn't I have first dibs at that?
It's true, but no, I'm like, I know that person from somewhere. So it was really fun for me. Jim, I have a question for you. Being a Detroit guy, I'm a Toledo guy.
Okay,
so basically South Detroit. There's a lot of great creators that have come out of the Detroit area. And I-75 really has become kind of this vein of comic creators, just people, from within an hour of I-75 all the way down to Florida from Detroit. What do you think it is about this area that it really has sparked so many greats?
Well, you're going to be in trouble with everybody who lives in that area, because basically, when I grew up, it was a cultural wasteland. Basically, you went to the art museum in Detroit, and the big show each year was the people who designed the cars doing future cars. And I think I latched on to comics because it was the culture that was available to us. It was the art form that we could easily find access to, and being out there in the Midwest, we didn't have the museums that you had in New York or out on the West Coast. We found our inspiration from Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko. Later on, I'm sure other people came along to inspire the younger folks. But that's basically my answer to that one. I won't be able to show my face in Detroit for weeks to come.
Well, and it's funny. I'm good friends with Arvell Jones, who credits you as one of his big inspirations, and it's Detroit has just become this mecca for talent now, and I think it has a lot to do with it. It's a working class city, and people work really hard and they master their craft.
Yeah,
and so they get noticed.
To do something other than work in the factories, that's a big inspiration. I worked at a stamping plant for a bit, and putting these big pieces of sheet metal into a stamper, and it would come down and make a fender out of it. And one day, and we wore these big gloves. One day I didn't get my hand out of the way fast enough, and my glove became part of the fender. And when it went down the assembly line, it went down with my glove, and I immediately quit.
That's, not that unlike my own story. So,
Yeah,
we have some people who are very excited to see you. We're getting a "We're Not Worthy," like Wayne and Garth, and then Jamie, your nephews are watching.
Hi, boys. I love you guys.
It's always fun when family shows up. So how did you guys start working together?
it's quite a story.
I'm annoying. That's how.
Yes, true. Basically, I started doing comic book conventions again after I had injured my hand in a compressed air explosion, and I had sort of given up drawing and that, and I was going to conventions just to sign books and things like that. And Spencer Beck was my agent on this, and Jamie was working with Spencer, and Spencer asked me if I would do a drawing of Dr. Doom, who is Jamie's favorite character. And you want to jump in at this point, Jamie?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So eventually I sat down one day, and I had been working with this rubber ball and doing all sorts of stretching exercises because I had a big hole in my hand right about here. And it was working better, and it had stopped cramping up as much. So I tried Dr. Doom drawing, and it worked. And later on, we had sort of met, but I think we met more in New Jersey when you got the drawing.
Yeah, we had met a couple times, but yeah, nope. That's the first time we really talked was Jersey, yes. And I had that gauntlet that you wanted.
And I'm still waiting for it. Okay. And we became friends at that point. And later on, I found my hand was working better. And she was always bugging me about drawing again. Like I said, she's very annoying. So I said, okay, I'll give it a couple of tries. And I wanted to do some convention drawings, but I just wasn't up to inking. So I talked to her because Jamie had been inking some of Keith Giffen's drawings at the conventions, which I thought were really nice. So I asked her to start to do a few of mine, and I just thought they were gorgeous. And we sold a few of those, and my hand started getting better. And I thought, I think I want to do a comic book again. And everybody had been bugging me for years to do Dreadstar again. So I started penciling that, and I needed an acre. And so I went to the person who had inspired me with all her annoying pestering, and put her to work. And we've been working on it, and it has been an adventure all in itself, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. You could say that. It's been an interesting year. I mean, there was deadlines, and he's like a slave driver, but.
Well, we started off before the quarantine, and I think I got about 20 pages done, something like that.
We'd gotten right before the ship pages and stuff, and we got back from Mexico doing that convention, and COVID was here, basically, and.
I think you gotten about 17 or 18 pages inked at that point.
Yeah.
And we went down to Mexico City for a convention. And on the way back, you contracted COVID-19, a very serious case.
That's not fun.
No.
I don't recommend it. And it was really fun drawing puke while puking and trying not to get actual puke on a page.
Yes, I have one page in there where Tim loses lunch. And just about that time was the time you got sick. So that was an adventure. It was quite an ordeal just getting you through that and coming back to working on this job. And from that point on, we were on the phone just about every other day, weren't we? Talking back and forth.
I had you and Spencer and Joel Adams, like constantly calling to check in and taking turns on who was going to see what form and shape I was in. And Yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't recommend getting it.
And we got you through that. You got through that, and we've gone on and we finished the book. Really,
4 days after the deadline that I was shooting for, but still.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you almost died in the middle of it, I think we did pretty damn good. And so then we're working on the next book. We've got 30 some odd pages penciled, and you're starting in on the inks on that. You've got
on page 10. I'm doing the 10th page, and currently took a little break because I moved during the virus after finally somewhat being better, but not quite. So took a little time to try to start unpacking and getting life back on track here.
So we've had quite an adventure on this book so far.
Oh God.
Yeah. Can you tell people what the book is?
The book is Dreadstar Returns. It's a 100-page graphic novel. It's coming out through Ominous Press. If it's not on the way to the printer, it is imminently on its way to the printer. There's some backup pages they have to fill with ads and stuff like that. It's a story of Dreadstar 25 years after we last saw him. And we find out what he and Eddie and Willow and a number of other characters have been doing there in that time. And they end up having to face a menace that at first they think is unknown. And within time, they realize it is something that they know from their past. It's something from their past that's come up to haunt them. And the story goes from there. And it's the usual amount of bloodletting and cosmic stuff all thrown in. We had a lot of fun with it.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You're working in a very traditional style, pencils and inks. You hear a lot of these days about people doing pencils the old way and then the traditional way and then scanning them and somebody digitally inking or digitally coloring. But you guys are working the way you've always worked. Is that correct?
Well, you do Jim sends the pencils. I do make blue lines, but I make the blue lines so that I can practice, so that I know what I'm doing. Like every artist has their own style, and Keith Giffen is a lot different than Jim Starlin. And so sometimes I don't know exactly what I want to do, but the finished product is always over the pencils, like they're always over the actual pencils. So I don't do the digital. I'll do a cleanup in the digital before it goes to obviously to the book, but because you get little splatters. But no, we're doing the old-fashioned way.
Show them the other page also.
Well, this page got a lot of press. I'm sure people have seen that.
That's our little political rant in the middle of the job.
Yes.
But from there, Jamie scans them for me and sends me a TIFF, and I go in and do the coloring from there on the computer. So we're not complete Luddites on this job.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you are working so traditionally and then ending it digitally, this modern way. And, I imagine, is that a product of the way publishers want product now, want final product, finished product, or is that just the way you guys have found best works for you?
The way it works best for us.
There's a lot of people that
will publishers what they want.
At the end of the day, the pages have to be digitalized to be sent to them anyway. So you're going to scan them in. A lot of people will just do the blue line and do the digital, but then you don't have any original art at the end. So you don't have a finished product. And I'm sorry, this stuff is amazing. Ink, like a paintbrush. Like I don't want to sit there with a pencil and a Wacom tablet. That to me is just, it probably makes it a lot easier, I'm sure, and a lot easier to clean up. But personally, I think I would do better just old-fashioned way.
Sure. It's just, we're talking to a lot of creators this weekend. Everybody has a little bit different style, a little bit different, the way they do things. And it's really interesting to get into the nitty-gritty with people about, okay, why do you choose this particular thing, versus other things. So let's get into the work. You guys you're working on a Dreadstar book. which is cool. But one of the things that I introduced you as the Galactic one, Jim. So many of your characters are these, our background in here. Our background is like a space scene that we made for this convention. Like, what is it about? What is it about space, or the galaxies that led you there?
Well, my most traditional answer to that is I don't have to draw horses or cars in outer space. Basically, I like to do stories that are not preachy, but will tell a story, will tell a lesson as they go along. And it's so much easier to do a story about, Star Trek showed us how to do that way back in the early Gene Roddenberry days. You can do a story about racism, and it doesn't have to be as preachy as you would be if you had set it on Earth. It can actually be quite amusing in its own way on that way. Though it doesn't being amusing, I walked into that one, didn't I? Okay, but yeah, I just like the fact that you can build a world and then go off and go in any direction you want at that point. Dreadstar's universe lends itself to going off in any direction I wanted. It was fun working in the Marvel universe, but there were limitations of where I could go with that, and I don't have that anymore.
Yeah, and you said it's you walked into it, but it's true. You can, and it's Gene Roddenberry taught us that, about if you can tell the same story you need to tell about what's happening in the real world, but if you make the people purple and they've got scales, it doesn't feel like you're getting hit over the head.
And it'll probably sell better. Purple people and green people always sell better.
Yeah, no, it's true. You've worked on a lot of, just looking at the bibliography, it's a wall. And it's amazing the length of your career. What do you attribute your longevity in the industry to anything in particular?
I'm pretty much incapable of doing any other work other than this. I'm qualified as a heart surgeon. Had a really bad time trying to do that. Lost a number of them. I could work as a mechanic again, except they brought in all these computerized things. I don't know if I could handle that. So it's basically I'm unfit for anything other than this work.
Nice.
I get to meet nice people like Jamie and folks like that, so why not stick around?
Let's talk about your time at DC for just a minute. Okay. You got to work with some really famous characters there in terms of, you worked with Batman, you worked with Superman, but what's interesting to me is your work on the New Gods, and your work on you did maybe my favorite Commandy book ever. You did the OMAC story in that, and OMAC is one of my favorites. And it's one of those things that's interesting to me. What's it like working again on that level, but now you're in a whole different universe in terms of the DC universe?
Well, each one of those projects, especially the New Gods that you mentioned, were they were kind of nightmares to work on, actually, because there was so much other things going on, doing all these crossovers, and so we always had to accommodate something else. And I found most of those projects, especially the Death of New Gods, kind of unsatisfactory at the end. It's far from one of my favorite books. Had another writer who kept asking for things to be put into the book because he was supposed to follow up on it and recreate the New God. So he was asking for certain things to be done, and like the melding of the two worlds with John Byrne's Apocalypse and New Genesis, which John Byrne had already done. And they asked us to do that again. And then when we got done with the project, this other writer was starting up on his, he came out and said, "Well, I'm not following any of that stuff. I never planned to." And I went, "Really? Okay." Yeah. And, OMAC was another one because I started in on doing that for Al Milgram, who was the editor up there at the time. And it was just before DC had its huge implosion. And I got 4 issues done, and half of DC's line disappeared, including Commandy. So that ended up being fed off inside back of Warlord or something like that, as I recall. Someplace weird.
Yeah, there was some stuff in the back of Warlords. There was some stuff in the back of it'll come to me. A Commandy book. I've read it all. It's just all sitting up there. Yeah, it's one of those things. Batman the Cult was a huge influence on me. And I want to ask you, what's it like to take one of the tent poles of the industry and get to play in that sandbox?
It was a lot of fun. I always thought that Batman is much better off without Robin. They did a period there where they kept Robin in the background for a while when Neil Adams first started drawing it. And the whole idea of going off and fighting crime with a teenager that you dress up in primary colors while you're just in blacks and grays and hiding in the shadows always struck me as beyond child abuse. It was child endangerment. And Batman should have been arrested all by himself there. But I always tried to avoid it and using Robin. And I kept suggesting that we get rid of him. And then,
which you did.
Which we did. Denny O'Neil came up with the idea of the call-in vote. I always suspected that Robin was toast as soon as they started doing this. I was terribly surprised how tight, how close the thing was. It's like 72 votes out of 10,000 kept Jason Todd alive, or dead rather. So it was fun. It was a whole different head over at DC than it is at Marvel. Marvel's always into making money. DC at that time was more into the private editors had their own little camps, and so it was difficult doing crossover books because everyone was trying to protect their little bailiwicks.
Right. So one of the things we've been talking about is how 2020 is led us into this era of new collaboration. We're collaborating with other creators in new ways. Because you can't be in person. You don't get to see each other at conventions. There's all these, things that we can't do anymore that we used to be able to. So, Jamie, you work with Pete, you work with Jim, you work with others. Jim, you work with a lot of people. How has your collaboration changed in the last year, and what do you like about it, and what do you miss about the old ways?
I miss seeing all of the other creators like on a regular basis. I miss the Lims, hi Ron Lim if you're watching, and Stephanie and Brandon. I miss seeing Spencer. I miss like all of our friends. So, it's a really great way of just continually seeing people and catching up. And now it's all virtual, which I've never been very good at like social media and staying in touch this way. And most of my friends get in touch with me via Facebook, and I ever since I got sick, I'm just terrible at it. I miss that, and just seeing the work that people are doing in hand. And I mean, I'm on the other side of the country, so I guess for Jim and I, it would have been the same, except we'd see each other more often and get to collaborate in person more. But and Keith, if I was working on something with him. But I mean, at least I work on some stuff with Joel Adams here and some other friends that are in California. So at least I've gotten to like still see some people, but it's just not the same. I miss that face-to-face kind of stuff.
But on the other hand, there's you and I have sort of developed an intimacy over the phone, and that with at the end of my workday, usually I'll take a picture with my camera or my phone of the page I penciled, and I'll send it off to Jamie to see before she ever gets the art. And sometimes she makes suggestions and that are pretty handy. We've talked over things as we've gone along. There was one page that I said, I need a creature. I need an unusual creature. And you threw me like 3 or 4 different.
Oh no, I threw you 10 things. I was just like this, and this, and combine it.
Yes, and I combined a number of them, and we ended up with this pet-like creature with an eyeball floating in it, and tentacles, and so there have been things lost, but I think you and I, on our collaboration, have found some new ways of doing things that I think have worked pretty well. I'm quite proud of the Dreadstar Returns book, and I think we're doing even better on Dreadstar versus the Inevitable.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to talk so much about it and like actually just get that input out there more. And you know, I'll FaceTime, be like, this is what I'm doing here. Like, I changed this a little bit. Is that okay? But it's fun. I mean, I love this part. The creating part is really fun, and being able to actually communicate. Thank God for that technology during this, because otherwise it'd be really hard.
It would be fixing things. If this had been 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to get this project done the way we have.
Yeah.
You know, technology got up just in time for the emergency. You know, yeah, but I'm looking forward to the convention again.
Me too.
Yeah.
Miss my friends.
I want to shake hands and have a drink with folks.
Yeah.
So I want to dig in a little deeper on some stuff, but I thought maybe we would take a little divergent. And Jim, Mr. Starlin, you've worked on so much great stuff, and Jamie, you're working on so much stuff as well. Do you have a project in the back of your mind that says that you say, if I could just get my hands on that, this is what I do?
You mean an existing commercial character from DC or Marvel?
Yeah, a dream project. I mean, even if it's something that's your own, there's something. If I could just find the time to get to that.
I personally, we are doing something like that.
Yeah,
currently.
Julie and I are writing something together. We're working on another project that will be coming out through Ominous, probably sometime in the next month or so. We'll start doing a Kickstarter on it. We're working with the artist Rags Morales, and Jamie and I have written a story called Outrage, and it'll be a 3-part 3-segment story. We're still working on how the breakdowns of the actual print are. At this point, it looks like it's going to be like 3-issue miniseries.
Right.
And so we're working on that, and that is something that we're both hot on.
And there's another project that a friend of mine, Adriano Morales, is going to do the art on that, and that is something that Jim is pulling on as well, and that is called Enhanced. So there's a lot of powwowing and other projects going on.
So you mentioned you're writing this project that you're doing with Rags Morales. How do you approach the creative process differently when you're writing as opposed to when you're doing the line art or inking?
In my case, I do much more work on the breakdowns. My breakdowns are, let's see if I can have, my breakdowns are little, I can't find my notebook. I know it's around here someplace, but they're little, I break down the panels, and then I have little notes that say, Thanos hit Warlock, that sort of thing. And when I'm working on something that somebody else is going to draw, I'm much more complete on those things. Where on Dreadstar versus the Inevitable, I've sort of winged it on the first 30 pages or so, and we'll tighten it up as I go along after that. That's the biggest thing.
Jamie?
As far as, I originally started doing stuff. It's funny. It started out as one story and kind of became a separate entity in itself. And I'd started just with ideas and little breakdowns initially, and passed them on to Adriano, who's an amazing artist, and I can't wait for people to see what he does. But the story kind of went in a totally different direction, and he's in on the writing process too, because we just started powwowing, and Jim is. I mean, it's just really interesting to have these ideas. You start it one way, and then it's like, oh, this went in a totally different place, but I like where it's going, and it's yeah, I did some initial breakdowns, but Adriano is he's up here, he's got it. Like I just say stuff and he just knows. So it's going to be interesting. I can't wait for people to see what's going on with that.
Yeah, and you being able to have the flexibility of doing your own stuff. Originally on Outrage, I was going to be writing it all by myself, and I had done up a first script and started looking through it, and it's a female character, and I really didn't like my voice in it. For the character herself. I liked the story part, I didn't like the voice, and so I sent it to Jamie to look at. And
I had plenty of voice.
Yeah, comes out all over the place. And so we've been incorporating her suggestions into the first script, and then ones from that point on we're going to work on all the way through.
Right.
Now.
And I think being a female, actually speaking in a female kind of mentality is something like, I mean, you have to kind of picture yourself in that role as well. And I think, trying to get a voice for a female character in that way, like I was just like, well, this is what I would suggest. And it was just, I love it. I'm excited about it. And I think that
she threw out all my parts where I had Rage scratching her ass or picking her nose.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I just want to remind people who are watching, we're fully interactive. If you have a question, throw it in the comments. We'll bring it up on screen. Nick Barucci from Dynamite says that Jim is one of the greatest creators the industry has ever had and probably ever will have, and Jamie is great on Jim.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, Nick. You could come on. You know how to get here. But when you guys find somebody who you have a handshake with that works so well, like you guys do, does it inspire more creativity? And what is that like when you have somebody who, like I said, you work so well together? That trust, does that help you to take more chances with the work you're doing?
Yeah, and I think it's a confidence build too, because we know each other and we're comfortable with each other. And so I may try some things I wouldn't have on my own. And I think with the team, when we were starting off, I think I know Joel Adams was a big help with you on the inking to begin with. But I think also just, talking back and forth with you was probably a help at the start, wasn't it?
I would say I'm really lucky that, like, I'd never done a project this big, and especially like, solo. And yes, Joel Adams helped me tremendously, but also there are other artists that I could ask questions to. And, like I can get direction. I can ask Scott Hanna, how would you do this? Or like, how would you handle this? And I've been looking at Bob Layton's metallics. I mean, he is the king of metallics. There is so much talent out there, and I find that I'm not scared to ask for it. And sometimes if I'm comfortable enough to tell Jim, like, what do you want this to, if I have a question, I'll just be like, what do you foresee this looking like? Like I'll show a rough or something. Or I think that it does inspire to just kind of branch out and try something different. Yeah. Uh-oh.
We don't hear you.
Sorry, I muted myself.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm my COVID brain.
No, well, and see, that's actually the problem. I keep popping myself out for a second or muting my mic. I literally have been 2 weeks COVID free, but I still have a little bit of a cough.
Oh.
So I keep bringing myself out, so I'm not hacking into my microphone over you guys.
Oh.
So if I disappear, just yell at me that I forgot to turn my microphone back on. All right. I appreciate that. one of the things that's so impressive, and I think that adds so much to your work, Jim, and Jamie, you'll probably be able to speak to this a lot since you're inking it, is the background, the depth of the field. Your use of negative space to really make things feel huge.
I know where she's going with this one.
Yes, you do.
So my question is, and this is where my interview style is maybe different than others, is how do you get the depth? What does the process look like in terms of, are you somebody who's flicking a paintbrush, or are you using I have a friend who uses toothbrush to really get the stars and things in the background. How do you do that with negative space? And then how do you look at the depth of the page as you're, approaching it to decide how big you want to make it?
The story determines that, and the space stuff these days, I'm not doing any of that, drawing it in. I'm grabbing GPL photos and other things like that and manipulating them and making my own space stuff up that way. As far as depth goes, that's basically when we get into perspective. And Jamie, would you like to touch on to the perspective and certain double page spreads?
I would love to talk about one particular one, which I am so on the fence about grabbing right now and showing how Jim loves
Do it.
space. He told me one time before he sent out a page that he had an inker that literally killed himself over a page that he sent. And I was like, are you serious? I was so naive and gullible, I believed it for a second. But when I saw the page he sent, I was like, oh my God, maybe that is a true story. Because there were so many little characters. I was like, oh my gosh. Noah, he can definitely throw some characters in there and he will utilize that space. But no, I think the perspective, yeah, like when you have to think about the space on what you're looking at, it's like a science as well, like a mathematics kind of thing where you literally have to study perspective, and it's you want it to work in that kind of space. But Jim does not take for granted any empty space. I will give him that.
I'm afraid of negative space.
Yes, I think you might be.
Yeah, it's a phobia of mine. Though I can see some negative space on that one that you got, but we filled it in with
Really?
color, didn't we?
Where do you see some negative? Yes.
Above Dreadstar there. That's negative. There's nothing behind him.
Oh, let's look at the other side of the page.
Well, come on, make it hard on me. You really want to dig out that page. Is that page handy?
Is what?
Is that
Yeah,
page?
I can grab it.
Yeah, grab
me a
it. I'll
second.
fill in space in the meantime.
I will show you guys.
We had this one in Dreadstar where this guy named Medlow attacked Dreadstar and Company with about 1,000 androids that they kept on being fixed up or replaced as soon as they were destroyed. And so in Dreadstar Returns, there's sequences where old characters and old menaces return. And I decided the androids were one of them to bring on. And I thought 1,000 androids, that's a good place to use a double page spread. And so I started kicking around and penciling with it. And I had it sort of laid out. And I figured there were going to be a lot of them. But I drank too much coffee one day and while I was working on this. And apparently I sort of overdid it, according to Jamie, who's killed herself now. Here she comes back with this.
Good thing I'm organized.
Yeah.
Would you guys like to see the insanity that is called Jim Starlin? Look at the androids. Which way do I need to go? This way. I don't know.
This isn't even
nope, the other way.
And that's a product of too much caffeine.
No, actually, there's a worse page than this, isn't there?
Oh, there is another page that has, but this is, there is a worse page. Do you want me to try to dig that one out?
I think this was cover us right.
But I mean, look at those little characters in the background.
They're making
They're
bigger.
so tiny, and there's so many of them, and I keep going the wrong way because I'm a little dyslexic.
StreamYard is hard. I constantly am pointing with the wrong hand. So, you know, so, but now when you go to ink that page, I mean, what is that? Is it just progressively smaller brushes? What are you doing to be able to do that? I mean,
with the small,
well, as it gets smaller, it as you move further away, and it's got to get tinier and tinier and tinier.
Well,
does the magnifying glass get bigger and bigger and bigger?
I do use a light up magnifying glass. I'm not gonna lie, because sometimes especially since COVID, my eyes sometimes just don't want to cooperate with my brain. But the micro or the Copics get smaller, like a 0.05 to a 0.03 maybe, and they just get tinier and tinier with a microscopic thing, and a lot of patience. And then I'm always reminded that, Joel always say, it's gonna be this big when it's in the comic. Don't worry, it's gonna be this big. And it's like, yeah, but I'm gonna know.
Right.
I want it to look good on the page art.
Right. Does the fact that you'll know affect the way you approach this?
Oh, absolutely. I am a perfectionist, and there's no way if somebody was to look at original art, it has to look good. I've seen the work of, I'm sorry, but Scott Hanna is one of my favorite inkers, and if I look at his stuff, it is perfect. I'm like, I don't want anything less than perfect. Yeah.
So we had Scott on yesterday.
Jamie, is your obsessiveness.
Yes.
We had Scott on yesterday, and he's actually on right after you guys with Jim or with John Romita Jr.
Oh,
and
I love both of them so much.
He talked about that obsessive nature of it's got to be perfect every time.
Yes.
Don't turn in work you're not 100% happy with.
Yes, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah,
It's like embarrassing if somebody looks through and I've gone to conventions and looked through people's their portfolios where they're selling original art, and some of them leave the black just not there. They just have the X's. I guess they do it digitally, or they'll use a Sharpie which kind of turns purplish. And I just look at it and I'm like, this could have been a beautiful page. Like, I'm sure it looked good in the book, but this is a product of Jim's work and mine, and I'm like, I don't want to show something that looks like not as great as you would imagine it if you were to see just the inks and the pencils. So to me, it's not even an option. It's like, it has to look good.
Being self-employed, you have to be obsessive. I'm going to throw out two quotes to you from different folks. I don't know who the first one's by. It's always judged by your last job. That is a truism. And the other one is by the late Jack Abel, who this is more about the financial end of it. And Jack's quote is, "Every time I go to the bathroom, I lose money."
I'm going to get that tattooed on me somewhere.
Yes.
I love that
I've
line.
not heard that one, but now that's going to not leave my head anytime soon.
Yeah, that's.
I love that.
Gives you an idea just how scrambling you have to be sometimes with these deadlines.
Yeah. Well, we did that Metalman cover, and I was like, it has to be good. It has to be good.
It's true. We're getting a lot of love for Jamie in the comments. So glad to see her here. Inkers are so often the unsung heroes of the comic world. We've had a lot of inkers on this weekend, and I think it's true. The guys who do the pencils, rightfully so, get a lot of credit. But I think the inkers deserve as much credit because it's an art process, not just a one and done. If you turn in blue lines, a comic book's going to look weird. If you turn in
you can turn out the blue line. I mean, when you do it, but if you're inking on a blue line and such, if it's not your pencils, I've got the blue lines of Jim's original pencils, and that way he can see the difference too. And I know he's got original scans of what he did, but it does change.
I'm saying if you publish the blue lines, the whole thing is going to look strange. It's going to be white pages, because that's the point. It's inkers are so important because they add that shading, that depth, that feel to so much of what the line art is. Brainy would like to know, have you ever gotten to the point where it's so small or detailed you're like, I'll just copy and paste or do it digitally?
Me personally, no. Well, there was something originally. I was going to ink some other things for Jim, and I was like, there was so much little details. Like I could technically, but I wound up not doing the inking because we were wanting to get on Dreadstar. And maybe that was a little detailed, and I thought about it, but I just don't think that that's my way, and I think it would take away from the art itself. So no, I've never done it digitally. It's always been hand.
Yeah,
So
I'm more to digital on this partnership, aren't I? You know, as far as putting the digital things in.
With the other one, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're getting down to it here, and I haven't asked the big question. I haven't asked about Thanos. I haven't asked about the Infinity Gauntlet. Where did the inspiration for the characters and the story come from, Jim?
Well, the character is simple. I was taking a psychology class after I got out of the service, and we had a guest speaker come in and did a lecture on the Freudian concepts of Eros and Thanos, the dark and lighter side of human nature. Of course, I latched onto the darker side. The Infinity Gauntlet, I will have to credit my years of going to a parochial grade school and all the pounding in of religion that they did, and the nuns who were scaring the hell out of everybody all the time. And basically, I thought to myself, we've been taught about this benevolent, loving God. Wonder if he's a mad son of a bitch who wants to do it about half the
Language.
people
There's
around.
children on here.
Oops. Okay. Mad son of a gun who you can bleep me out later. And, you know, basically that was where he came from. And then we started doing the story, and the Infinity Gems were there already. And so I put them to use, and they were a throwaway in the Avengers Annual, and I put them to use. And now they make movies out of this damn stuff. Here I go again. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So, what's it like seeing Josh Brolin on screen playing your character? What's it like seeing so much of this stuff like on the big screen and revolutionizing the fandom? I mean, really, so many new fans because of it.
It was fun. I mean, what can I tell you? It's surreal. It's fun. When I sat through the premiere of the Infinity War, I was going, their scene, my scene, their scene, my scene. It's a trip that I'm still trying to get used to.
Oh, you have to tell them about your part on the movie, because that is so funny. You're going to like this one, guys.
Oh, okay. I did a little cameo in game, and that was a strange experience because, you know, I've never acted before. And I got on set, and they gave us a trailer, and there was makeup and the wardrobe. They stuck me in their clothes and gave me a script. Fortunately, it was just one line, so I didn't have to rack my brain too badly. But we did about 12 takes of this, and it all went smoothly until about the fifth or sixth take. And Joe Russo's had this little soliloquy he was talking, which was about 4 or 5 lines, and before my line was supposed to come out, and I was always supposed to say, "And what about you?" And so he gets into it, and about the second line of it, I go, "I can't remember my line." And he gets into the third one, and I'm going, it's here somewhere. What is it? What is it? What is it? What was I supposed to say? And finally, he ends his thing, and there's this dead silence on the set, and it comes to me, and all of a sudden I go, "And what about you?" And everybody sort of looks at me going, "I don't think we're going to use that take." It was really embarrassing. So
it's funny. Alan Alda has a story that goes, if you ever forget your line, he tells actors this all the time. If you ever forget your line, just listen to what the person's saying and think about what is my reaction going to be, because usually it'll remind you. You know, he finishes his soliloquy, and your job is to move the story on. Okay, well, what about you? It's an interesting thing if it ever comes up again.
After that, I doubt if they'll ever give me another deal.
Were you cameoing as yourself?
I thought I was just a member of the group, but Chris Claremont later on pointed out that I was probably the head of that talking group there, because I was the one who asked about what was going on. For some reason, I always thought that Joe, the director, was the head, but then I realized his talk is he's another person in there for the therapy.
Yeah. Stan had a story about he would show up in a white shirt, khaki pants, and white shoes, and they'd hand him his wardrobe to be a white shirt, khaki pants, and white shoes.
Mine was a sports jacket, which I seldom if ever wear. So I dressed up a little bit for the part.
We're coming down to it. So tell people where they can find you. Obviously, they can head over. They can contact Spencer if they want to buy original art from either of you. But where can people contact you? Where can they follow you? Where can they see what you're doing?
I have a Facebook page that I go to occasionally. I'm not very good at social media. I'm on Instagram too. There's pictures. Once again, I haven't done anything in months.
Goodness, we both are terrible, aren't we, with social media?
Yeah, you can pick up our product through Ominous and eventually through the comic book shops. There'll be we will be distributed through the comic shops rather fairly soon. There'll be some announcement. I can't get too deep into that. I don't think we're supposed to talk about that yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've got an Instagram and Facebook, and I'm never on Twitter, so that one's useless for me. But just James Jameson Instagram is probably my easiest. It's hard to find me on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's best to probably just pretend you're talking to us, and you'll probably get a better conversation that way anyhow. No.
Well, and if you really need him, Spencer BCK at AOL.com can get a hold of him.
Yeah.
So my last question for you guys, and this is just my being this guy. Well, I suppose I should have two. I have two questions. If together you could revisit any of the characters other than Dreadstar who you're working on, that you've worked on, who would it be and why? Is there a story you've yet to tell that you'd like to tell?
I would have done more with Eros. I really had some ideas there when things fell apart with me with editorial up there at Marvel, of doing more with him, and he's the one I want to have done more work with.
I really liked working. I liked helping and doing the work that I did on American Gods, and I feel like there are some sub stories in there, and I'd love to work with Neil Gaiman on something with that, like some kind of sub story from that, because it was such a great story, and I know he's very inspired by a lot of my favorite writers. I like the Long Tea Time of the Soul kind of thing, and I think that there's, that would be a lot of fun, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of sub stories with, you said other than Dreadstar, but I'd like to go and do some stuff with Eddie separately, which I've mentioned to Jim because I'm obsessed with that character. And yeah, I think those are the ones I want to do.
So, go ahead.
I think Victor's Eddie. You know that.
Yes.
Victor's my
got
cat.
the most personable cat who likes
No,
to get
if
in
you
front
heard
of
that
the
big
camera
bang
all
when
the
we
time.
started, that was my cat knocking over a stack of stuff. That's why he was suddenly on my lap. He's an alien. He's not a cat.
I'm surprised
He's flirking?
he hasn't made his way into
He's a
this
flirkin.
interview
Yes,
yet.
I actually have a flirkin. That's what Spencer says. And actually, if you met him and you saw him, you would agree. He is not a cat.
So you
know that.
So you have your Dreadstar book that's coming out from Ominous. Is there anything else in the next year that we should be watching out for that you can tell us?
Outrage through Ominous also. I'm working with
Nicole Jenilik.
Nicole. Geez, how do you pronounce that last name?
Jenilik.
Thank you. I drew a blank. Called Midnight Road, which will be coming out through. Once again, I'm trying to blank. Joe Pruitt's outfit.
Aftershock.
Dynamo Comics, yes.
Aftershock Comics.
Aftershock, thank you. This is why I have a reader. I have no memory on things. And that's about it for right now. That's quite a bit, actually. And Jamie?
I mean, I'm working on these projects with you, and I'm working, I mean, pretty much everything's entwined with Jim, but the Adriano, like I said, the artist that's doing Enhance, we're trying to really get back onto that track. There was a long break in there because Adriano got busy and I got COVID. So, you know, there was that. But yeah, I think this year we're really just plowing through the ideas we've kind of already talked about.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you guys being here. It's been so great to meet you both. It's been an honor for me to get to talk to so many legends this weekend, including yourself, Jim, and Jamie. It's been great to meet you. I hope we can do more. We'll have you guys back on and spend some more time when the Dreadstar book is coming in the comic shop, so we can promote that real well, as well as your other projects. For those of you watching, we will be back in just about 2.5 minutes here on the EXP Expo Day 2. This is our Kyle has to at some point consume sustenance break, and we will be back in 2 minutes after I choke down a protein bar with John Romita Jr. and Scott Hanna. Make sure you refresh wherever you're watching now, so that you can see the live video pop up with those fellas. We will be back just very, very, very shortly. Thanks again to everybody who's been here so far. We'll see everybody in just a second.